When you chart out demand versus supply of people over time, what that math tells you is that 10 years from now, 2035, every CPA in the profession will have to be 2.7 times more productive on a revenue per employee basis than they are today. That is crazy.
Are you an accountant with a continuing education requirement? You can earn free NASBA-approved CPE for listening to this episode. Just visit earmark.app in your web browser, take a short quiz, and get your certificate. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Earmark. I'm Blake Oliver. Today I'm joined by David Wurtzbacher, founder and CEO of Ascend, a private equity-backed platform that transforms accounting firms' operations. David brings unique insights from scaling Lightwave Dental from 7 to 80 locations before creating Ascend, which has completed nearly 24 successful accounting firm acquisitions in just 2 years. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Blake. I'm happy to be here.
So is it fair to call Ascend a roll-up?
You know what? I really hate that term. But if you're reaching around and trying to understand what are we doing, that's an okay place to start. The reason I hate the term is it's just so impersonal and it sounds like such financial engineering or something, and that all this is about is like kind of creating a dog pile of firms. So we have a much bigger, more intentional vision than that, but I think it's a fair place to start.
So you're acquiring small accounting firms, and like, how does that work? What kind of firms are you rolling up? If I have to use that term, what kind of firms are you bringing in, and how does it work when they join Ascend?
Yeah. So to answer that, maybe it would be helpful just to tell you a little bit about the genesis of the idea for Ascend. So I'm not a CPA. I come from outside of the profession, but I, for a long time, have been very interested professionally in these professions that are like bedrocks of society, and they're essential. But they don't usually attract a lot of talent from outside of that industry or profession. And so what I'm really motivated by is finding where in an industry the business owners have a common set of problems that I think I can help solve. And there's not hubris in that. It's just that, the outsider perspective and kind of marshaling different types of resources can be really useful. So I at some point, the accounting idea occurred to me. I started talking to partners at firms of all different sizes. I talked to staff, I talked to clients, and I learned that it's a really interesting time in public accounting right now. Of course, everyone is talking about the pipeline issue and how do we fix that, and everyone is so interested in the technology topic. But I heard lots of other things like, hey, there's been a couple of private equity deals. We're not really sure what to make of that. And the AICPA says we need to be, taking a big step towards advisory and away from compliance. And so there are just lots of interesting things. And I would ask people, what are you going to do about all of that? All that's quite a cocktail of problems or opportunities, depending on how you see it. And people said, look, if you want to tap into resources to make a lot of these problems easier to tackle, like an option that's out there, and it's been out there for many decades, is to merge up. Just, move your firm into a bigger firm, and you get some help and you get some extra resources with all those things. And I said, okay, well, what's the problem with that? Because I could kind of hear it in their voice when it was a particularly entrepreneurial CPA that I was talking to. And they said, well, we are fiercely independent. And I heard that a lot. I heard, this independence value come out all the time. And I said, okay, there's something interesting here. And I also found myself, frankly, drawn to the entrepreneurial, fiercely independent firm leader. I thought, like, wow, look at the drive and the creativity and the energy and all the opportunities surrounding them. So the whole model of Ascend was to bring the resources that people were looking for to reach their full potential while preserving their independence. And so
I get to keep my brand, my firm name when I join Ascend?
You do. I would elaborate on that and say, when I would ask people, like, tell me more about independence, what is it about independence that's so precious to you? Most of the time, the answers I would get back were name on the door. We have a long standing reputation in our community, and our reputation matters. We care a lot about our people. We care a lot about our clients and the way that we serve them. We don't want to just disappear into a bigger firm where we become just a number and we just have like a day job to do. We like the strategy and the business building. And so we want to have influence over the strategic direction of our firm. And so I said, great, like we can preserve all of those things. So when somebody comes in, that's the promise. The promise is we are going to promote you and support you and amplify everything that's great about you. And as we come together, we're going to have some strength in numbers, and we're going to have some scale that allows us to build some critical integration in the back end so that you can focus on doing what you love and no one has to reinvent the wheel. And so when somebody comes in, they start to learn the resources that we have and the integration that we do across firms and kind of where that line is between the things that they do on their own and the things that we do together.
So private equity has been a big buzzword in the profession, a lot of negativity around it, particularly around every time there's a big private equity investment in a large accounting firm.
Yeah.
There was just a story in the Wall Street Journal comparing what's going on in accounting specifically to what has happened in medical over the last few decades.
Yeah.
And the stats that I see are not great of surveys of doctors. Like doctors, the vast majority of them, well, at least the majority, I think it's like 60% or more, view private equity as having had a negative impact on their profession. And only, 11% or so have a positive view. So there's a lot of like fear in accounting that like this is where we're going. The part model is dead. That's what Mark Koziel said at the AICPA recently. And what's going to replace it? Is it like private equity ownership of accounting firms? Like, what do you think about all this? As somebody running a private equity firm, this is what do you have to say to all the CPAs out there who are worried?
I honestly, like, I think you are right to be worried. Like the reputation of private equity is not unwarranted. And the issue with roll-ups, and I'm using air quotes if you're just listening to this, is that most of the time they exist because some private equity guy decided that he wanted it to exist. And so the whole purpose for the roll-up is to generate a return for that guy and that private equity fund. And so what happens, particularly when you have a short time horizon, is that private equity like doesn't really see the people involved. They don't really see the meaning in the work. They don't really see the trust and the relationships that are what, in particular, public accounting are built on. And that's where like bad decisions get made, like short time horizons, not focused on the right things. So as you mentioned at the top of this, I came from the dental industry where I did something very similar. And really, when we started Lightwave Dental, like we were the anti-corporate dentistry people. Like that was our whole approach, was that the private equity backed corporate dentistry had gone in and started like basically actively pushing dentists to diagnose in a certain way and to use supplies and lab work from certain places. And like, it was all about profit. It was all about profit. And the doctors hate
More
it.
services, more revenue.
100%.
Like that's what they're pushing
Well,
for.
actually in dentistry, okay. So in dentistry, more revenue. Yes. So if you've been to the dentist, you're not a dentist. Like you don't know if you need a filling or a crown for your
or an
work.
X-ray.
Yeah, or an X-ray or whatever. And so private
Yeah.
equity would say, hey, let's just like stack these up. Let's do more crowns, fillings, blah, blah, blah. Let's get all of our lab work done overseas, even though the higher quality stuff can be done right there in your hometown. And so the whole idea of Lightwave Dental was we are never going to do that, ever. We will never infringe on the autonomy of a clinician to like diagnose the treatment that their patients need. And are we going to make less money than someone who does do those things? Yes, we're going to make less money. But like the whole point of it was to have happy dentists. We
Right.
thought if we had happy dentists that were doing what they love and providing the care their patients needed, that they would stick with us for a long time, and we could make long-term decisions together, and we would grow, and everyone would win. So that was a very different approach in dentistry when I got there. Um,
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because last year I was at the pool in my community and I met a dentist who worked for a private equity, a corporate owned dental practice. And he was a young guy, new, young in his profession. And he was just like complaining about it. Like, oh, they just book him solid and he has no time to breathe. And he's just going from patient to patient to patient.
yep.
And he felt overwhelmed. And he's like, is this the rest of my life?
Well, that's really sad. That's really sad for your friend, but unfortunately, like it happens a lot. So the Wall Street Journal article you're mentioning, I saw it too, and they were not dentists, but they were hospital doctors of some kind, if I remember right,
Emergency room doctors.
ER
Yeah, these
doctors who were
yeah,
saying,
these
"Hey, like private equity hasn't been good for us, so you in public accounting should be aware of what could happen here." And the corollary here in public accounting, in particular, is like the quality of the work, auditor independence,
Yep.
and that sort of thing. So I think that like I think that the warning is not unfounded, because there are plenty of examples in the medical world, as they point out, where there have been issues around this. And so I think it's really important if you're going to do anything with private equity, it's really important to figure out like what kind of people am I talking to? Why are they interested in accounting? How long are they going to be here? And do they really get that this entire profession is built on the trust that the public has put on us, um, to like steward the financial ecosystem, basically. And I think honestly, and unfortunately, like a lot of people don't understand those things. Maybe it's because I had the experience in dentistry, but I think it's also just because of the way I see work and the length of time that I plan to be here, and just my honor for the profession in general. Like we've been really focused on this for a long time. We brought in a general counsel and a deputy general counsel from the profession to really help us with quality management standards and how do you operate with the spirit and the letter of the rules when it comes to alternative practice structures. And I don't think they will have a problem with me saying this, so I'll just say it, but that we proposed to the AICPA that they let us be a standard bearer for all of the overeager private equity people that are trying to get into public accounting, so that we can help people understand the seriousness of um, of this issue, and we can help them operationalize the code of conduct. Anyone can go and read the code of conduct, but how do you actually operationally make sure that you're staying true to like the quality promises that are so important to the profession? And it seems as though where it's headed is they're going to let us do that on a volunteer basis through the AICPA.
That's great. So it seems like the time horizon of the private equity firm is really important here. If you're looking for a really short term return, then and you're not thinking about people, then the obvious way to juice EBITDA is cut costs, pile on the services, add a lot of revenue, but there's these long-term costs that are like not on the balance sheet, these
For sure.
liabilities you build up, right, with people.
Yeah.
So like what is a short time horizon in your mind, and what is yours? How long are you in this?
I tell people all the time. So I am 37 years old, and I tell people all the time this very well could be the last thing I do. So I'm thinking of Ascend in terms of decades. So to me, short is certainly anything less than 10 years, and you will not find a private equity firm that says like we want to be here for 10 years. That is just not the way that it's operated. That 10 years is usually the entirety of the fund life that they're investing out of. And so they will all say, "Hey, we're in it, 5 to 7 years." The data on the private equity industry says that most investments only last 3 to 4 years, and so you're onto it. Like you can imagine the types of decisions that you would make if you were looking to make a quick buck in such a short period of time. And I think that, like certainly that works in some industries. Like private equity has generated good returns for their investors, who, by the way, like a lot of people don't understand this, that the investors in private equity funds are causes anyone would care about, like charities, hospitals, endowments, foundations, pension plans, insurance companies. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, they're not. So but the investors are passive, right? They're just
Those
in,
investors are passive. Yes, those investors are
and
passive.
and so it's the fund managers that have this obligation to deliver this return that they've
Yes.
promised, and they have
Yeah,
to figure out how to do it in a very short amount of time.
they do. Yeah,
And and so, like you said, if you're trying to flip a firm in 3 to 5 years, what kind of decisions are you going to make? Are those going to be
right,
good for the people, or are those going to be better for your short-term profit?
right. Yeah, exactly.
Which,
Yeah, and
well,
when
in
it's just, unfortunately, it's just impersonal for the average private equity investor that's getting involved. So we set this from the very beginning. We said we wanted to be a top 20 firm. We actually got pretty close to that pretty quickly. We are now by size a top 25 firm across the whole group. But that was never the part that we would emphasize. We would say we want to have the most engaged employees in a profession that we have revitalized. And that revitalization comment is meant to just sort of hearken to the talent shortage, the pipeline problem, and kind of remembering a time where going into public accounting was like one of the hottest jobs that you could get out of college. And that has changed for a variety of reasons. But our vision of what the future of this could look like is where that's true again. And so we're very people focused, and we're not going to solve any of those problems in 3 years. Like there are things that we can put in motion and make a lot of progress on in a short period of time, but like it's going to take us decades to fully realize our vision.
so, what do you focus on then on this longer time horizon? How do you help firms? You're not rebranding them. You're not
Right.
bringing them all under Ascend. They're keeping their individual brand, website, all that.
Yep.
So, like, what is it that you're doing that creates value for the firms that are joining Ascend, other than the financial buyout that I
Yeah.
assume that the partners are getting?
Yeah. So I have a take on why the pipeline problem exists that I think is pretty different than what a lot of people say. Like I hear so much about the 150-hour rule and base compensation, and we need to go to the middle schools and high schools and like tell people about public accounting. And I'm not against any of those ideas that surround those things. Like I think there's good thought in those ideas, but my view is that it all comes down to leadership. And if you have great leadership, then you build great workplaces and you offer great services to people, and people want to come work for you, and then they stay for a long time and develop their careers. And in public accounting, the client service orientation, as honorable as it is, it sort of like puts a cap on leadership in a firm, because the client is always coming first and the work is seasonal. And so there's only so many times throughout the year where you can really make progress on strategic initiatives that you should do. And so the very first place that we go is to the leader of the firm. And you have typically what you have is a managing partner who is at least doing some client service. And usually they're doing a lot of client service. And we want to help them through a transition to become a true CEO, defined as them having one client, which is the firm. So we're not discounting the importance of client service. What we're saying is that there ought to be a leader in the firm that is only focused on making the firm better. And we're really not going to be able to do a whole lot until we get to that point. Once we have that, the next thing that we want to help the leader with is to set a vision for their firm. And a lot, coming up with a strategy and a vision and writing it down, all these things, mission, vision, values, all that. We obviously didn't invent any of those concepts, but there is some trick in the doing in terms of actually enlisting everybody in your organization in that mission and aligning everybody to it. That's really quite cultural. Like a lot of conversations that you hear about culture are about benefits and the fun things you do and retreats and stuff like that. And those are all really important aspects of culture. But there's also this like high performance angle of culture. And what we want is to create inspiring clarity of purpose. That's how we talk about it. So, clarity of purpose about where the firm is going to be in the future and how exactly each person in the firm contributes to achieving that vision. And like these two things alone, like the leader and the culture aspects, ignite an energy in these firms. It's really unbelievable. There's so much potential just trapped in great, even the best public accounting firms. We have many that have gone from, 15, 20 million of revenue to 40, 50, 60 million of revenue in really short periods of time. And their employees are happier. It's not like they're, taking on all this work and everybody's drowning. Like they're set free in an interesting way. So once they come up with their strategy, we then have part of the trick in the doing is like a rhythm for making sure that you're staying on track with that over time that we help people with. But once they've documented, hey, here's where we're going, here's what's important, then we can start plugging in the resources of Ascend into that firm so that they can have help along that journey. And if you like, ordinarily, if you're a small firm that wants to become a medium or large firm, there are a ton of decisions and investments and hires that you have to make to transform yourself in order to do that. And what we say is that when you plug into Ascend, you can skip the line on all of that because we have the resources you need. So, for example, anything back office we can just do for you. So the accounting for the firm, finance, the HR, the payroll, all the compliance filings that you got to do, we could take that off your plate. We have a centralized technology team that will make sure that you have a tech infrastructure that can scale, that's secure, that's cost effective, that's easy to use. You don't even have to worry about it. We have a recruiting team that's amazing. And we can talk about them if you're interested, because that was one of the first teams that we built. So you can tell them, hey, here's who we need, and we will go get them for you. We bought a company called Sentient Solutions that was, they have a team in Hyderabad, India that do tax audit and CAS. So we bought that business, we installed new leadership, we transformed it, and we created a playbook around how you actually can use a global team to elevate the work that you're doing. For clients, we have an AI team that's, proprietary, like software engineer type people that are building things for our people. I just today came from our CAS summit. So it's like one or two of the CAS leaders from every single firm and we're just identifying bright spots of how people are running and building their CAS businesses. So there's also a lot of community and collaboration that we are facilitating across firms.
Knowledge sharing, resource sharing. You've got the back office teams
Yep.
set up. You've figured out the technology. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But like you said, in order to take advantage of all that, if you are the CEO of the firm, if you're running the firm, you can't be doing 80% client work and 20% running the firm.
Yeah.
So that's where you start is getting the leader out of client work as much as possible. Do you have an example of that you can share?
I do. Yeah, we had I would say so actually the very first firm that joined Ascend, he wasn't doing any the managing partner wasn't doing any client work at all. His name's Aaron Dawson. And frankly, I probably learned a lot about what I think about this topic from him. The third firm that joined was a firm called LMC in New York. And Lee Cohen was kind of classically doing a lot of client work himself. And there were two big unlocks for Lee that, now everyone kind of has the opportunity to learn from that helped him to elevate out of client work. So the first thing is all about mindset. the mindset that you have. And it's just so common, especially when you're close with your clients, to believe that nobody can do this but me. No one can have this client relationship but me. And so you kind of have to confront that mindset and say, like, you know what, like I have great people here and I can help my client understand that I'm here, but that it's a good thing for them that we have, bright, young, hungry people in our firm that are going to do work for them. So that's a big thing. The second thing that Lee would say, like 50% of it was just a mindset shift, and the other 50% he would say was that we hire we help find a chief growth officer for every single firm that joins. And this is not your kind of classic BD chief growth officer that you hear talked about a lot in public accounting. This is more of a general manager talent from outside the profession. A lot of them have MBAs, but they are like hungry, humble, smart people that come in and just start creating visibility for that leader about, hey, here's what's going on in the business, and here's the opportunities, and here's what you could be focusing on that are really going to move the needle. And so between the mindset shift and the CGO, Lee Cohen literally became a different person. He would tell you that. He would say that he was like stressed and unhappy and all these things, and he became someone who was very happy and set free, and contributing and contributing at a level and turning his firm into a type of firm that he really never imagined.
And was there like a magic moment for him when that switch happened? I mean, that's a very dramatic
It's
change.
very
Like,
dramatic. The answer to that is sort of yes. There was a magic moment. So it started. We do this thing called CEO Power Launch, where we bring these managing partners in as cohorts, and for a couple of days we talk about this transition from managing partner to CEO. And that was the first kind of like head explode moment for him. And then we have sort of a little bit of a book club that we do together. And there's a book called 10X is Better Than 2X. You ever heard of that, Blake?
I haven't, but I like that idea.
Yeah, like the concept is that, like, if you focus on things that really, really matter, you're going to get a dramatically better result and you will be happier. And I do think that it's just human nature to sort of get drowned out, like to find yourself drowning in limiting beliefs and small thinking. And if you can break out of that, it makes a big difference. So I know,
Yeah.
particularly for Lee, that book made a big difference.
I mean, I know how it feels. When I had, my firm, the big moment was, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I had there was like a month or two where I was completely overwhelmed because I was managing all these client relationships, and I finally got someone on the team who I thought maybe they can do it. Maybe they, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm just going to take a chance and just transition this stuff and see if it works. And it was like 80, 90%. But guess what? The clients didn't really care
Yeah,
about that 10% that I was so worried about. They
sure.
didn't mind. And I was able to come in and help when I needed
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
realized that for like so many years, I was just holding on to all this stuff that I didn't need to. Uh, it was
Good
not
on you for
necessary.
good on you for realizing it. Yeah.
But
Another thing that
yeah,
I encourage people to do is um, just carving out time to think is so rare.
yeah,
Like there's always a notification or a thing to go to or a thing to do. And just like sitting yourself in a different part of your house, or like going to a nice hotel and renting a conference room or something, and just thinking about, like, what do I do all day and why is it that I'm doing those things? And what would have to be true for me to move this around? It's amazing how quickly you can really
yeah.
actually like land on the answers that will set you free. But it does take at first the intentionality to go and like do
Yeah.
some deep thinking about all that in the first place.
I'm convinced that it's impossible to do more than one thing well at a time.
Yeah,
Like you can choose one thing you want to be good at and work on that,
yeah,
but doing two things or three things or four things, it's not
it is hard. It's
not
very
really
hard.
possible. You have to
Yeah,
pick. So if you're prioritizing the client work, that's what's going to get done, and that's great. But
yep,
you're not going to be able to scale.
for sure.
You're not going to be able to run your firm like a
That's
real
right.
managing partner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you completely.
So you got to make that leap. Well, let's talk about the talent strategy, talent acquisition.
Hmm.
You said, I think that was one of the first functions you built,
Yep.
and it's one of the biggest problems that firms face. 75% of firms report staffing shortages. I mean, it might be more than that. Um, so what are you doing for your firms when it comes to helping them attract, retain talent? Like what is working at Ascend?
So the first thing that really worked was building a team of recruiters from outside the profession that really know what great recruiting looks like and just pointing them at the problem. Like so many firms that have recruiters like grew up in the profession. And so they're also kind of trapped with like the baggage of old ways of doing things, or um, maybe it's a CPA turned recruiter. There's a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't know the best practices for finding candidates and building momentum in a hiring process and closing that candidate. So having professionals from outside the profession that are doing this all day, every day for our firms is a huge needle mover, huge. The second thing is what I call having an irresistible offer. So what I mean by that is um, you have to have something different on offer for a good candidate because that candidate has a lot of choices, right? If they put themselves out in the market, like we hear the stories all the time. Good candidates have 6, 7, 8 offers that they can choose from. So at Ascend, that irresistible offer is it is really about like what it means to be an Ascend supported firm. It means everything you love about the smaller local firm, plus everything that is great about scale and having resources. And especially like the young people in this profession, like they can tell the difference between a firm with great leadership that's going somewhere and a firm that is stagnant. And
Yeah.
when you get in, you talk like they start talking to our people about like, hey, tell me about the culture, where they actually have something really interesting to say. It's like, here's where we're going to be in 5 years. Here's how we're getting there. And our CEO is like focused on all these things and da 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 da. And the candidates really pick up on that. The other part of the irresistible offer is actually financial. So the profession has been very base salary heavy forever. And part of the reason is that like incentive compensation is kind of hard to figure out. It's like, oh, there's always unintended consequences. And how do I design this and make it fair and everything? And so we have a bonus program off the shelf that firms can use that really allows us to pay our people more in cash than they can get anywhere else. Um, and on top of that, because we have private equity backing, like we have more flexibility in terms of how we use equity compensation. And so we have well over 100 people across all our firms that are managers or senior managers that are investors in Ascend. They own Ascend stock. And that opportunity to make more money with better tax treatment throughout your career, sort of the opposite of all those things in the legacy partnership model, is really, really attractive to people. So um, those are the two things that really kind of unlock the talent problem. Even great firms, like every firm that came in said capacity is our number one issue, and we're like, okay, we'll go do our best to fix that. And now, like it is that issue is gone. So our big issue now is like, how do we go and get all of the right kinds of new business that we want to keep our great people excited and motivated and working at the levels they want to be.
So did I hear you right? You said the hiring was the biggest challenge. What was the biggest challenge?
They would describe it as capacity, probably.
Capacity.
Yeah,
Capacity.
yeah,
So, okay, I love hearing that Ascend employees are also shareholders or have equity. How does it work? Is it like stock options? Is it how do you do it?
yeah. So the way it works is every firm, depending on their own growth, earns for themselves an equity pool. So our firms that grow the most get the most equity participation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that pool gets allocated to the people in the firm, and we don't allocate that for them. That's up to the partners to decide, hey, how are we allocating this? And then we provide some guidance based on the level of seniority in the organization, like here's a range that we think is an acceptable range based on this big survey we did where we asked people in public accounting, we had like 500 responses. We asked them, how much would you like to invest in any given year? How much would you invest over the course of your year? But think of this as like bite-size chunks, like between $10,000 and $50,000 that
Hmm.
people are investing, and it's really being funded by this bonus program that we also have. And so they are like basically dollar cost averaging into Ascend stock over the course of their career. And we teach them like, here's how equity value creation works in a business like this that's outside of the partnership model. And then they can connect the dots between like, oh, if we're doing this thing or that thing, or we watch Ascend succeed, that is what's driving equity value for us and our families and for each other. And it really does create like a different cultural
Yeah.
energy.
Well, it's taking what's good about the partner model and keeping that ownership, shared ownership of the highest performers at the firm is what's great about the partner model.
Yeah.
So if you get rid of that, what is there to create the culture of we want this firm to succeed rather than we're all just mercenaries working
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
earn a salary? Because it's ultimately like if your people leave, you have no firm, you have nothing.
Nothing.
You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
there's
And
so it
then I
is
would
the
add a
people.
layer. I'm totally with you on all that, Blake. And I would add a
Yeah.
layer to say that it's a really important design principle for us that everyone, no matter what firm you're at, you own Ascend stock, because it's the firm that earns the pool of equity, but it is equity in Ascend. And that creates a one team attitude across all of our firms that is really the reason, like it unlocks so much collaboration across the firms because they feel they enjoy being a part of something bigger.
Okay, so you said that after solving talent,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out the recruiting, it was now business development that's the priority
Yeah.
because you're hiring all these people, you got to give them work to do.
Yep.
So how does Ascend approach biz dev, marketing, sales when you have all of these different brands?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a disadvantage of this model compared to
Well,
just
it
having
depends.
everything
Yeah.
under
Yeah.
one.
I would say maybe, maybe not.
Okay.
These brands that are a part of Ascend, some of them have been around like 50, 60, but in one case, 100 years. We are very focused on the middle market. So although we're a top 25 firm, and I know there are other top 25 firms that say they're middle market firms, but like what I mean by that is like you take a smaller, nimble, high touch, white glove service type of a firm where there's a lot of employees that want to work at firms like that. There's a lot of clients that want to receive their work from a firm like that. We care a lot about that type of firm continuing to succeed and thrive for the long haul. And I think over time, what will happen is the Ascend firms are like the only independent option in a market as consolidation runs its course through the profession. So I really like having these long-standing local brands. Um, just like in talent, like I think the way that you move the needle on this is it's like it's simpler than maybe you would think. So um, the first thing is for the firm to understand what kind of client do we want. And most of the time, if you like look at the mix of new business that people bring in, it's a hodgepodge of stuff. There's like
Yeah.
really small
We
businesses.
we
you
help
know,
everyone, right?
we help
Whatever you
everyone.
need.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So focus. What kind of client do you want? And we don't tell them what kind of client that is, other than that we are really happy to be in this middle market segment. But that was the case for them anyways. So we help them through an exercise of defining their ideal client profile. This is just like basic sales
Mhm.
and marketing stuff. Um, then you should have a goal. What is the new business goal? Again, we don't tell you what that is, but looking at all the people you have and how much how much work they need to be achieving their own career goals and your goals for the firm. What is your goal? And let's get smart about breaking that down across all the people who must or want to be involved, so that everyone kind of understands their contribution to the greater whole. And then finally, and this is this is like, it's just like, let's keep track of it and have a meeting where we review our pipeline and like hold each other accountable to like doing the activities that are required to convert a lead into a new client. And so we just help firms through that, um, those kind of fundamentals of new business. And then I will add one other thing, which is that we have run a business development training series just to help younger people kind of figure out how to do this. Every firm's got the rainmaker that sort of naturally understands these things, but how do we make it less scary for young people who want to develop in their career but are kind of not sure about how to do it, or they don't like sales?
Yep.
And so we have a series of courses that we offer for people to just kind of bring down some barriers there too.
Yeah, that sounds great because when I was at a top 25 firm, uh, there was a lot of sales training,
Hmm.
but below the top 100, it can be really difficult to learn how to do this
For sure.
because you're kind of in a client role until suddenly you are in a business development role in a lot of
Yes.
firms, right? It's sort of
Yeah.
like you make it to manager and then they expect you to start developing business if you want to make it to partner, but you've got a ton of work to do and nobody teaches you how to do it. So you just got to go figure it out.
100%.
And some people do. They just figure out a way. They maybe they hack their own way into it, or they're good at golf, right? And they figure it out, or
Yes.
they
Here
go
are
to
two things that really move the needle that maybe will be helpful to listeners. First one is, surprisingly, the average person in a firm like doesn't know all the services that your firm offers. So just
for
doing
sure.
really basic educational, like here's what we do, here's what that means, here's why it's great for clients. Here are some examples. Da, da, da. It just gets people's wheels spinning, and instead of having like, oh, I got to go like sell this one service line that I know, like they know more about the whole firm. So that's a really easy thing that anybody can do for their
Yep.
people, is just like have a lunch and learn where you explain everything your firm does. The next thing that we learned from one of our firms that I thought was really cool is that anytime they go meet with a referral partner, they ask that referral partner to bring one of their young people, and then they bring one of
Mm,
their young people. So you're going to the meeting and you've got like the connections happening
yeah.
at different generational levels. And you're just like those younger generations planting seeds, like they're working on clients, they can talk about stuff, but really you're forming the foundation for a relationship that's going to grow and blossom over time.
I love that. You're. It seems to me like the common thread here is you're taking best practices, you're taking structured approaches, you're taking like the learnings of MBAs for the last 100 years, and you're just giving that to these firm owners so they don't have to go learn it all and put it all together. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
a
lot of
big part of
this.
it. And what I would add to it is that the Ascend team now is about 80 people. So just to put that in perspective, like the country's largest alliance has a staff of 30, because we have 80 people that all they do is wake up every day and ask themselves, like, how can we serve our firms better? And so not only is there an intellectual like repackaging, let us help you not have to go figure this out on your own, there's also like boots on the ground that are helping you do the work and make progress. And that's a big part of the formula here too.
That's a way to think about it. It's not a roll up. It's like you're an alliance with equity, common equity ownership,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it feels like.
Yeah. We toyed around originally with like, should we call ourselves, an alliance or a neo alliance or something like that? But it
Yeah.
really is, it is a, like, we're building this really powerful like nucleus between all
Yeah.
of the firms that can help everyone achieve more than they would be able to achieve on their own.
And you couldn't really do what you're doing in just a pure alliance because there needs to be common ownership.
Common
There
ownership
needs
that's exactly
because
right. And it's
yeah,
also, a lot of this is like, it requires capital to do a lot of these things too.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't just give people knowledge. It's
Right.
not enough.
Yeah.
You can give people. I mean, I've been educating accountants for a decade now. You can't. just give people knowledge. They don't have the time to do it. They don't have the resources to do it. You have to help them
100%.
do it too.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think we're going to come up with some sort of like new name for this
Yeah, that'd be great. I would
at some
welcome your
point,
ideas.
right? Because like you said, roll up is not ideal. It's like that has negative connotations that I just don't feel apply here.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about it. Um, Before we go, I want to talk about tech and AI and
Yeah.
all that because it's shaking things up. It is automating a significant percentage of compliance work or has the potential to do it. We
Hmm.
actually haven't seen in surveys that it's doing a crazy amount of the work yet, right? Maybe firms are saving like 2 hours a person, and that's for the ones that have really adopted AI,
Hmm.
2 hours a week, maybe. What are you seeing? What are you working on? What's going on at Ascend when it comes to AI and automation?
So, first of all, just an observation about this. There's so much more like hype and um, like future forecasting than there is reality in this area. So, for the firm that's feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm totally behind and everyone else has automated their whole workflow and I haven't, like that's just not the case. Here's something really interesting. So we once early days of Ascend, we charted out demand in the profession. That's just going up and to the right because things are getting more complex and business formation and all these things. So demand is up and to the right. We know that there are more people leaving the profession than are coming in to the profession, and something pretty serious would have to change for that to change directions. And when you chart out demand versus supply of people over time, what that math tells you is that 10 years from now, 2035, every CPA in the profession will have to be 2.7 times more productive on a revenue per employee basis than they are today. That is crazy. That is really, really
That's
crazy.
yeah. When you consider that, like a typical firm, a firm that's doing well, their staff are bringing in what like 200,000
Yeah, that's a pretty
a
typical
year in
number.
revenue.
Yeah, so that exactly.
So
So that number has to get close to 600,000 per
yeah,
person. The even like crazier thing than that is that at that point in time, about 85% of the profession will be people with a decade or less of experience in a world where most people say like you can't even make partner in 10 years.
yeah,
So that is the backdrop that we start with, where we say, okay, that is a big problem, and we want to be racing to the solution as fast as we can. And our acquisition of Sentient is a part of that kind of global teaming, and our AI strategy is a part of that too. We decided that like there are going to be some cases where it makes the most sense to buy a product that's out there just like anybody else, and there are going to be some cases more intimate to our workflow where we would rather build product ourselves. And so we are spending many millions of dollars this year developing our own AI driven solutions to elevate what people are doing in their careers. And it's really exciting for our teams because they know that no almost no public accounting firm at all, but certainly not a medium sized or smaller firm is going to be able to do that.
yeah,
Track the talent, spend the money, all that kind of
yep,
thing. And it's one of the things that we can do. So we're
yeah.
really excited about that. Our team will be close to 30 people, just like software engineers and product people by the end of the year. And I'm really excited about what the future holds
Yeah.
for them.
Well, it sounds like the best of both worlds from a tech standpoint. You're getting the smaller firm culture in whatever firm you're a part of that's part of Ascend, but you're also getting whatever the Ascend tech team comes
Yeah.
up with. So,
Ascend intelligence.
Ascend Intelligence. There you go. Trademark that
Yeah, exactly.
before Apple gets to it.
Yeah. So, it's still early for us. But we've done a lot of work on what's possible and what costs
Yeah.
and how fast can we do it. And
Well, the thing
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
David, there's still so much that to be done in just like normal workflow optimization, right? A lot of
absolutely.
firms that you talk to, well, probably by the time you talk to, I imagine they have some kind of practice management system in place, but a lot of
Well,
firms
practice
don't.
management is so messed up in the
Yeah,
profession. Like it doesn't,
yeah,
it's so messed up. There's like hardly a good version of it. And one of the things that our AI team is working on is how do we take all of the client context that you pick up over years and years of a relationship and really actually get it into one place.
yeah.
So it's out of your head, it's out of the spreadsheet and the work papers in your inbox and some other tool that you use for this or that. How do we get all of that client context in one place so that it's right at your fingertips and it's really easy to be a trusted advisor instead of spending all of your time like aggregating the things that you need to do work.
Yep.
So that's one of the things I'm really excited about.
Well, I'll have you back on to talk about it at some point in the future. David, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me and sharing Ascend's journey and mission with Earmark. And can't wait to see you around.
Thank you, Blake. It was fun.
Oh, by the way, before we go, actually, I should say if anyone's listening and they want to get in touch with you or learn more about Ascend, where should they go?
You know what? Just email me. I'm David at ascendtogether.com.
Thanks, David. Bye.